Welcome back to Puck Nuts, the place where we dig into the wild, strange, and untold stories of hockey. Now picture this. The puck drops, the crowd explodes, players race across the ice. But there's something different. No helmets. Every head is bare, every hit feels a little scarier, and every shot looks like it could change a career in an instant. Sounds crazy, right? But here's the thing. It wasn't that long ago that this was normal. For decades, NHL players skated without helmets. Fans thought nothing of it. Some even believed helmets made you look weak. So today we're asking the big question. What if the NHL went back to no helmets? Would the game feel tougher and more exciting? Or would it be a disaster waiting to happen? Let's break it all down. But before we jump in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Puck Nuts so you don't miss more hockey deep dives like this one. The early days, bareheaded battles. In the early days of hockey, helmets weren't even part of the conversation. From the early 1900s up through the mid-1900s, players skated onto the ice with nothing protecting their heads, just hair slicked back with a bit of grease. The game itself was already rough and dangerous. Sticks were heavy and wooden, the ice was choppy, and fights broke out often. Still, no one thought about helmets. Why? Because hockey carried a culture of toughness. Back then, the idea was simple. Real men didn't wear headgear. Helmets were for construction sites, not hockey rinks. Some of the game's biggest legends, Gordie Howe, Maurice "Rocket" Richard, Bobby Hull, played nearly their whole careers without one. Fans got used to it too. The bareheaded look became part of hockey's image. You could see every emotion, every scar, and every bead of sweat right on a player's face. Why helmets were resisted for so long? It wasn't just tradition that kept helmets off the ice, it was pride. Players believed that putting one on made them look weak or scared. Some said helmets messed with their vision, while others complained they couldn't hear the game as well. But deep down, many feared being labeled soft by their opponents. Fans played a role too. They loved the image of fearless players battling without protection. They cheered for toughness, for the sight of blood, and for the scars that told stories. Helmets didn't match that picture. This way of thinking became an unspoken rule. Real hockey players didn't wear helmets. The mindset was so strong that even when helmets were available, most players ignored them. By the 1960s, less than 5% of NHL players wore one regularly. The tragedy that changed everything. Hockey's fight against helmets couldn't last forever. On January 13, 1968, the sport faced a tragedy it could never forget. Bill Masterton, a forward for the Minnesota North Stars, was checked during a game and slammed his head on the ice. He wasn't wearing a helmet. 2 days later, he passed away. It was the first and only time in NHL history that a player died because of an injury during a game. Masterton's death shook the entire hockey world. Fans, players, and doctors could no longer ignore the danger. Suddenly, helmets weren't just optional gear, they were life-saving equipment. But even then, change was slow. Many players brushed it off as a rare, unlucky accident. They argued that helmets weren't needed and still clung to the old culture of toughness. Masterton's death opened the conversation, but the NHL wasn't ready to fully change just yet. The NHL's helmet rule. In 1979, the NHL finally made its move. The league announced that all new players joining the NHL had to wear helmets. But there was one exception. Veterans already in the league could choose not to wear one if they didn't want to. This became known as the grandfather rule. Because of it, helmets didn't take over the game overnight. Instead, the change happened slowly, season by season. For years, hockey fans saw a mix, some players skating with helmets, others sticking to the old bareheaded style. The last player to go without a helmet was Craig MacTavish. When he retired in 1997, the no-helmet era officially came to an end. Today, it's almost impossible to imagine NHL players without helmets. Every young player grows up with one as part of the game. But this history makes us wonder, what if the rule had never been made? What if helmets disappeared today? Imagine this. The NHL decides helmets are optional again. Almost overnight, players start taking them off. The ice suddenly looks like a time machine back to the 1960s. Bare heads flying at full speed, sticks swinging high, and pucks zipping by at over 100 miles an hour. At first, some people might find it exciting. The old-school look would bring back memories for older fans. You'd also see players' faces more clearly, which could make the game feel more personal and emotional. But the risks? They'd be impossible to ignore. Today's NHL is nothing like the league from half a century ago. Players are bigger, faster, and much stronger. Shots are harder, equipment is sharper, and the pace of the game is lightning fast. Without helmets, head injuries would skyrocket, and careers could end in a single unlucky moment. The cool factor wouldn't be worth the cost. The science of head protection. Helmets are not perfect, but they still make a huge difference. They protect players from skull fractures, deep cuts, and even some concussions. Doctors agree that while no helmet can stop every head injury, they often reduce how bad an impact can be. Many players who walk away from scary hits today might not be so lucky without one. Now picture the NHL without helmets. Every slip, every hard check into the boards, every slap shot flying towards someone's head could be a disaster. A simple fall could turn into a broken jaw or a cracked skull. A stray stick could mean dozens of stitches. A powerful shot could end a career or even a life in seconds. Without helmets, hockey would quickly look less like a sport and more like a dangerous gamble. Fans and families would start asking if the NHL cared more about old-school toughness than player safety. Impact on the players. Without helmets, players would always carry an extra layer of fear. Not fear of battling in the corners or taking a hard hit, but fear of what one unlucky bounce of the puck or one awkward fall could do to their future. In a game this fast, it wouldn't take much for something tragic to happen. Careers would almost certainly become shorter. Repeated head injuries and constant damage would force players to retire earlier than they should. Some of the league's brightest stars might never reach their full potential because of concussions that could have been prevented. Fans might never get to see certain records broken or historic moments made because players would simply not last long enough. For young athletes dreaming of the NHL, the message would be frightening. Chasing your dream means risking your brain, your health, and even your future life off the ice. Impact on the league. For the NHL as a business, getting rid of helmets would be a disaster. The costs alone would be huge. Insurance companies would charge way more because the risks of serious injuries would skyrocket. On top of that, lawsuits from players with life-changing injuries would never stop. The league would spend more time on the court than on the ice. Sponsors and TV networks would also start to back away. Big companies don't want their names tied to a sport that looks careless with player safety. Fans would notice too, and many would lose respect for the league. For years, the NHL has worked hard to prove it's a professional, modern sport. Removing helmets would undo all that progress. Compared to the NFL or NBA, which keep improving safety rules, hockey would look outdated and reckless. It wouldn't just hurt the game, it would damage the NHL's future. Impact on hockey culture. Culturally, going back to no helmets would cause a big divide in hockey. Some old-school fans might cheer for the return of the tough guy image, saying it makes the game feel like the old days. But for most people, especially families, it would be a major turnoff. Parents would see the risks and might decide not to let their kids play hockey at all. The sport has spent years showing that it's exciting, professional, and safe. Taking helmets away would undo that progress and make hockey look reckless instead of smart and forward-thinking. Other sports. As a comparison, think about other sports for a moment. Baseball once pushed back against batting helmets, but today they're required at every level. The NFL is always testing and improving helmet technology to protect players better. Even rugby, a sport known for toughness, is now facing serious problems with concussions because players don't wear helmets. The truth is, no modern sport would ever choose to go backward on safety. If hockey suddenly dropped helmets, it wouldn't look bold or tough. It would look careless and outdated while every other league continues moving forward. The legacy of helmets in hockey. Helmets are no longer seen as a sign of weakness. Today, they're a natural part of hockey, just as important as skates or sticks. Players even add their own touch with designs and details that make them unique. For goalies, masks have become true pieces of art, symbols as memorable as the players themselves. Most importantly, helmets keep stars like Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, and Alexander Ovechkin safe. Because of them, fans get to enjoy longer careers and more unforgettable moments, instead of losing their heroes too soon to preventable injuries. So, what if the NHL really went back to no helmets? Sure, it might look old school for a while, maybe even a little exciting. But the truth is, it would be a disaster. Injuries would rise, stars would lose years off their careers, and the game itself would suffer. Helmets didn't make hockey weaker, they kept it alive. They protect the players while still letting the sport stay fast, hard, and thrilling. Some traditions are worth honoring but not repeating. At the end of the day, a helmet is more than gear. It's a promise. A promise that hockey can be tough without being reckless. Thanks for watching Puck Nuts. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another hockey story.